Hey everyone, it's Alan over at Cobblers Plus, and today I think this might be one of the first I'm doing on a full resole on one of these guys for a video. It's a pair of Tecovas. Got the T on there, but yeah, we're gonna do a full resole and everything on it. So come join us, check it out, and let's see what's going on inside these Tecovas. Alright everyone, thank you for joining us, and like I mentioned, it's going to be a pair of Tecovas boots that we're resoling. We're going to put a JR sole on it. The customer had requested a specific finish on it, so definitely be able to get that taken care of for him. But for now, let's go ahead and get these all broken down. So Tacovas is one of those brands that we actually do like quite a bit. For the price point, obviously they're not quite up there compared to, say, a custom boot or Lucchese or something like that, but for the price point, definitely by far one of the best models I've found out there. And of course, I've got my heel pry missing right now. Found it, put it in the drawer, but I'm gonna kind of look over and see what's going on around under them. I get people asking me all the time, like, what brands we recommend and stuff with boots and shoes and all that, and it's getting a little harder and harder to have certain companies that we can refer to or recommend, but Tacova is definitely one of the ones that I would recommend. If you're not familiar with them, they're designed typically with the Goodyear welt design and everything, and so that's kind of one of the key things, and they use leather materials on most everything that they're supposed to. So let me just hammer this out. As you can tell, this heel base on here is a leather, so it makes it a little bit of work to pull it off, but in most cases you've seen me put some thinner around the edges. I'm trying to avoid putting some thinner on because it's a lighter colored boot, even though they're in pretty rough shape. They need some love and attention, some conditioning, and we'll take care of that, but I still don't want to put thinner on there. It sometimes leaves a weird line on the lighter colored leathers. So clip off the clinch nails. Now the leather heel base, it's good that it's leather, but I will point out something real quick. Let me clip that so I don't get hurt on accident. But yeah, the way that they have the leather here and everything, from the feel of it, it feels like it might be a little bit of a lower grade leather, but most heel bases are actually, even on $1,000 pair of boots, I've seen it where they used fiberboard like this junk here, which is not leather, just to give you a side-by-side comparison. Leather tends to hold up a lot better. This fiberboard one, you can see it's all cracked and crumbling and everything, just not holding up whatsoever. But it doesn't matter what grade of leather you'll have for the heel base, it's still going to hold up better than the alternative, in other words. So that's definitely a huge plus. Grab my knife here, make sure it's nice and sharp. All right, now they do seem to use the lemon pegs, which are the little wood pegs in here instead of the brass ones, which is fairly common with a lot of boot makers out there. Let's see, try to get in there a little bit better. There's a lot of dirt and grime underneath there, but I'm not a big fan of the lemon pegs personally. I wonder if it's you can see right here, actually, grab the heel pry, you can see that splitting right there already. He wore through the stitches and everything, and it's splitting there. On this one, it's actually a little bit worse. I haven't even, take this off, I haven't even really gotten to this part of the boot, but you can see it splitting there. The only part I did was cut right here because it was already separating from here to here. You can see the lemon pegs, they're just separating there, and that's actually very common with a lot of boots, whether they're, you know, cheap or expensive, or, you know, mid-range price. good or bad quality builds. If they're using lemon pegs, unfortunately lemon pegs don't hold up very well long term. They get wet, they expand. When they dry, they shrink back, and the wood keeps going back and forth. The lemon pegs, they're made out of wood, and so they don't hold up very well. That's why I like brass clinch nails personally a lot more. Let's see, you can kind of peek under there. Yeah, it's really dirty. But one thing that's also another thing that I've noticed with a lot of companies that lately they've been going with a different type of glue or less of it or something, and so that's another thing that it kind of comes apart a little more easily. And that's what happened with these guys here. But the person who owns these, I mean, he's got his fair share of wear on it for sure. Just, you know, they don't want to use too much glue on it, I guess, or a different type of glue. And again, that's something I see frequently now. Let's get this sole off. So instead of you guys watching me struggle with getting the back end of the heel off, I'm gonna go ahead, it looks like it's coming off pretty good actually. Here, let's just get this guy off. Why not? I was gonna do the rest of it off camera, but why not? If you're new to Tacova, and if you currently have Tecova boots also, if you're on Facebook, definitely check out Tacova Enthusiast page. It was started by a fellow cobbler, Zane, in Snailsville, and yeah, they've got a fair amount of people on the group. I haven't been too active on it, unfortunately. There's a lot of groups I'm a part of, and I've been so swamped with projects and everything, it's kind of crazy. But I'll show you guys real quick. So this is the shank here that they've got. It's a metal shank, kind of small, surprisingly, and then it's got this plastic molding here to kind of give it that bit of a curve right there. Now, a lot of times they usually have the plastic just sitting over top, but it looks like they actually dip this and mold it directly to it. That's why it looks like it's missing a chunk, but it actually isn't. It's just the way that they've molded it and everything like that. So that's what it looks like there. Thankfully the shank's not broken, but we'll see what the other one's like. I'm gonna go ahead and clean up that cork, get it out of the way here because it's all crumbling, and get some of these nails out as well. Alright everyone, so I have cleaned out some of the cork already. I haven't pulled the nails yet, other than a couple of little ones here, as it looks like there's a few brass ones that I'll have to pull out here as well. I almost wonder. Yep, the brass ones, it looks like they used them in a few spots here, but the kind that they used don't really have a head on them. Let me pull one out and show you in comparison to ours. Okay, so this is the brass one that they used. You can see that it's all curved, and that's what it's supposed to do. It's supposed to turn into a hook or something like that, but the problem is there's no head on the top of these here. The ones that we use, however, they have a head. You can see right there. So they tend to hold in a little bit better, and since that one didn't have a head or anything on it, it didn't really function as well as it's supposed to. The leather ended up expanding and during, you know, maybe a wet time or something, and didn't hold up all that well, so it didn't hold the leather sole in place. And then the lemon pegs also failed too. Let me get this guy. That one's gonna be a tougher one. So they're doing their job on the inside of the boot, but when it comes to the sole itself, there we go, it's not doing what it's supposed to. Anyways, so from the build, you can see that the cork wasn't holding up all that well, but these things were dirty and done for, so the cork was going to give out anyways. The build of these, they use a gemming. You can see that felt-like material. Let me see if you guys can see it. That felt right there. And so they basically attach a gemming to this leather insole here, and that gets glued and stitched on, and then to that gets the it gets the liner, the toe counter, or whatever it might need, and then the upper, and then finally the welt gets stitched directly all the way through all those layers. Where, let me see, I have another pair of boots here. There's a different build. This pair here is a pair of Anderson Bean, And the build on these is a little bit different. I just wanted to show you guys. They took the leather footbed and they took a knife and they split it open sideways at an angle, and so that way when they stitch everything through, it gets stitched directly to the leather footbed. This is the preferred method of doing it. It's usually hand stitched. You can't really have a machine go through and stitch directly like that because it's all about the feel. Unfortunately, there's just no way to get a machine to properly feel things, but this is the preferred method. But not a lot of companies do that. Only a handful of companies will do that, and only on certain models, kind of the more premium options. But however, because of the design of this, there isn't really much room for a cork to be placed in here and then replaced down the road. So eventually this thing is going to give out here and the leather footbed has to be completely replaced. And yeah, so definitely adds to the cost of the boot originally when you purchase it, and it also costs a little bit more when it comes to the full recrafts if we end up having to replace that leather footbed. Where with the Tecovas here, the gemming brings down the cost at the manufacturing point and also on the resold point too, because if the gemming gives out, doesn't mean we have to replace the entire footbed or anything, but in most cases we end up replacing the footbed along with it. It's a lot better, it's more accurate, more safer, and everything, but it's a little more cost effective if we just need to do the gemming, like fix it up, maybe a spot here or there, where those ones, unfortunately, they're more initially. If I was to make myself a pair of boots though, like custom pair, which I will never have time, at least over the next couple of years, I would do this method personally for myself. But for mass production and for people to be able to afford purchasing boots and everything, this is definitely a good build. That cork gets pulled out, replaced, and everything, so definitely a good design and good build. Some companies just put some felt or a foam material in here instead of filling that cavity, where Tecova, thankfully, they use a cork, which is definitely a huge upper hand over a majority of the manufacturers out there in the world these days. So at this point I'm going to pull up that insole a bit. Now the insole in these is a full length. Most Western boots you just have like a little heel pad like that there. The Tecova ones, this one at least has a full length insole, which is kind of a pain, and I don't want to pull it out all the way. I'm just going to pull it up to here. I don't know if the camera will even show it, but you can see right there. That way I have enough access to remove these nails, and then when I start putting on everything and running nails through, that footbed doesn't get nailed down. I have to pull out some of those lemon pegs as well while I'm at it. So I'm going to go ahead and tear down the other one, get the nails out and everything, and get this thing cleaned up, and we'll continue on. Alright everyone, so I've got these guys all cleaned up here, kind of sanded out. Oops, hit the camera. And then I got the stitches pulled and everything. They came out fairly easily, thankfully. But right now I'm showing, we're going to give these a quick wash real quick. We're not doing a full bath or anything, but we're going to go ahead and dunk this so that we can clean it up. And this is a mixture that we blend in here at our shop ourselves. Different stuff. I'm not going to tell you all the secrets, obviously, because even though this cleans a lot of things, we use this for suede cleaning and all sorts of stuff. If somebody tries to attempt this themselves, it could turn out to be an even bigger mess and stuff, and I really don't want to have to fix someone's mistake like that. That's not going to be a fun one. But this will at least help remove the majority of the staining and the dirt and grime. Use a nylon brush to scrub it all up and everything. And then I'm gonna stick some boot trees in these and put them on our drying rack. Okay, all right, got the tops kind of cleaned up here. All right, or the uppers at least. And now, dump the top of the boot as well. And this mixture here does a great job for removing a lot of stains, the salts and minerals that are also absorbed into the leather from where, there we go. And then see, this is the other thing, see that line? It's starting to fade already, but that line right there, that's what happens if you don't actually get the whole boot all at once. You end up having that faint line, but since I dunked the whole thing, it's starting to blend in a little bit better. Gotta give it just a second to soak in all that goodness. There we go. So I'm going to set this aside in the sink so that it kind of drips. Do the other boot as well. Uh-oh, it's splattering foam all over. And that's why we have this sink here. But that gives you an idea of what I have to do as far as cleaning up these boots. And now I'm going to let them sit and dry for a little while. And when it's time to continue on, we're going to go ahead and fill it up with the cork, put the shank back in. The other shank was in good shape, so we'll go ahead and get that taken care of, and I'll see you back in a little bit. Well, for you, it's just a few seconds. For me, it's going to be a little while, actually, before these are all dry. Alright, everyone, so we've got these cleaned up. As you can tell, there's a few spots that are still a little iffy, and it turns out there was a bit of a cut there, so have to do something to fill that in as best I can as well. Obviously there's limitations when there's a cut like that on the upper on what can be done, but I'll see what I can do, especially because it's already kind of dirty and everything. But I'm just going to show you. So there's the shank, put it back into place and everything, and then filled it in with the cork there as well. The cork only goes on the ball of the foot because the shank already takes up some of the crevice here, and usually the heel, there's just no way that the heel can compress this far enough that you need to fill it in with cork necessarily. Some boots you need to do the whole cork filling, others not so much. It just depends on the builds. For example, if it's stitched all the way down, for example, like a 270 welt where it's all the way underneath the heel base, then usually there's some cork in here, but not always. Sometimes that shank is big enough where it fills in that space, and then if it's a 360 welt where it's stitched all the way around, then you fill in that whole area as well. But on most Western boots, that's not quite the case. So got the soles here, just pulled them out of the oven, and go ahead and glue them all on. So we're doing the JR soles on these guys, like I mentioned. And let's see, try to center that as much as possible. Oh, that is hot. So one issue I'll show you in a second. A bit of an issue sometimes with these JR leather soles because they're so dense and everything that sometimes you get these minor little cracks here, and it's not that the leather's cracking, it's more of the finish on the top here. But we're going to be taking off the finish anyways to apply a new one on these, so it's not too much of an issue. But that little small crack there, if you're wanting a neutral finish, can cause some issues sometimes. So thought I'd point that out. I've talked to a few cobblers that have had more issues with cracking. Sometimes it's just all over the place and everything, and it can happen. But yeah, that's just kind of how it is. These ones I unfortunately forgot to trace out and cut out and everything, but I think I got that JR logo pretty centered as much as possible. So let me go ahead and put this on the press while it's still hot, put the other sole in there, let it cure for a little while, and we'll be continuing. Alright everyone, so as you saw, I had gone ahead and trimmed up the edges, also sanded out the bottom here to put a finish on there. And yes, I am wearing flip-flops today. Okay, it's been hot. I know a lot of you guys give me crap for it all the time for some of my previous videos in the past, but a while ago I ended up crushing my foot, and it's a little bit easier on the foot to be wearing flip-flops as well. So leave me alone about my flip-flops, okay? I'm working on Western boots and I'm wearing flip-flops. That is correct, okay? Let me do what I want to do and need to do, okay? As long as I'm getting the work done. I've got a couple pairs of Western boots, but it gets too hot and I'm not about to be spilling stuff all over my exotic skins. So at this point, I'm going to go ahead and do the finish on it. A gentleman had requested that we do a finish like we had on our website with the cherry red. And once we start buffing it, buff it on the darker wheel, and it kind of brings a little bit of a black into it, which gives it some more depth. Otherwise, just a solid cherry red, it kind of looks a little funny. But get a little bit of another color over top with the buffer, makes it look nice. Using the Saphir Beauty Cure number 89 cherry for that. If you're ever wondering about doing this to your own boots or shoes, it might get a little complicating to do, because like in our case we have the buffers and everything, and it really helps buff things out to a smoother finish. Oops, hit the camera there. And on top of that, you kind of want to make sure you sand it, because if you don't have a rougher finish or anything like that, the color won't bond to it too well. Spray dyes are an option, but turn out a little messy, in other words. So just wanted to kind of point that out. All right, I'm gonna do a light buffing for now, and what I'm gonna have to do, I still have to channel this as well. This is kind of like, in other words, the first coat, in other words, that I'm gonna do. Then I have to go ahead and channel it, and I'm gonna do a little bit more red on there to make sure that the inside area has some of that red as well. Usually on Western boots, I don't pre-channel the sole, in other words, but because we're going to be trying to have that red stitching show through a little bit more, I got to make sure that it's channeled, and I want to make sure to get like a first coat of dye, in other words, on there. And it's the dye from here, the dye pigment, in other words. So I'm going to go ahead and do a quick buff over on this guy, because it just looks way too solid, and then go ahead and get the channeling going and continue on. So we'll see you back in a little bit. Alright everyone, so we've got them all stitched up and everything. Now the first boot, I've already got the nails in here, as you can tell, under the arch, and at the back of the heel, these clinch nails. So I'm just going to go ahead and do the other boot. Sorry, got interrupted there, but anyways, like I was saying, so these rows of stitching don't exactly line up where they end on each side, and we do follow where the original welts end and everything. So that's actually very common on Western boots a lot of times, when it's just a half welt like that, where one side's a little bit lower than the other, and that's just one of those things you can't avoid. If I line them up on this side here, they won't quite match up. So just wanted to point that out to everyone. But I'm going to go ahead and just kind of fast forward through running the nails in and let you guys see what that looks like in faster speeds. A lot of you have seen that a number of times, and I've talked about the clinch nails here plenty of times about how they turn into a hook. So I'll go ahead and just get started on that. Alright everyone, so I've got all the nails in, and I was just going to show you guys this scraper here that I've got, because we've got a little bit of the polish over here. So just going to show that that's what we have to do to kind of scrape it up. Sometimes we have to sand it, but this scraper does a little better job personally, I think, in these areas. So thought I'd show that process real quick there. So it leaves some of the red behind, but scrapes it just enough where adhesive binds to it nicely. Alright, so let me glue this up, let it cure for a little while, and then we'll get the heel bases put back on. Alright everyone, so I've got the heels right now on the press. I'm gonna get some nails in here real quick. This is called a heel wheel. It runs these gripper nails inside of the boot into the heel base area, so the heel base is nicely secured. I can't even talk. But I'm gonna go ahead and load up some of these nails real quick into these holes. Each one of these holes can hold a nail, but we don't want to fill all of them in. They're in different patterns and everything, so that the nails can fit into the boot nicely without sticking out of the boot, or the heel, in other words. Because if I put these really wide sections in, those nails will just kind of stick out or warp it. We don't want that to happen. Alright, get this guy off here. Make sure, sure enough, that insole almost popped back into place. Be surprised how many times not only I but other cobblers have nailed their heel bases on without removing the insole, or it got in the way somehow. It's happened a handful of times to me as well. Alright, there we go. Just kind of even it out here a little bit. These heel bases are still kind of warm, so I want to make sure that everything's on there nice and tight. There we go. Alright, set this one aside. Wouldn't be able to show you really the nails inside too much. Camera probably won't catch them, but they're in there nicely. I gotta always make sure that the nails aren't sticking out. Sometimes they don't go all the way in properly, especially when you're working with a tougher material. Leather tends to cooperate fairly well, but some fiberboards don't cooperate very well. So it just is better always to check. Because I used to have one guy that had a bad habit that worked here of never checking, and every now and then we'll get a boot back in and the person's like, oh, there's a nail sticking out. It's like, shoot. You can't really see it or anything unless you feel it, and so have to be a little bit cautious. Thankfully, this leather is very forgiving to take on nails. There we go. Alright, so I'm gonna let this sit and cure for a little bit, and then get it prepped for the heel base. As you can tell, I leave that outer edge sticking out just a little bit of the sole so that I can make sure I can grind this heel down at an angle nicely so that it looks like it's nicely flushed with what it's supposed to be. And then from then I can put on the top lift, I'll grind all that out and continue on. I almost want to put a red heel on there, but they didn't request for a red heel, so we'll keep it a neutral color on there. So we'll continue. Alright everyone, so I ended up not being able to finish out the video on my end too much when I was done with them, but anyways, we've got these all taken care of here. So I got the edges all finished out, got the inside glued up. I did try to clean up the spots and everything on the tops here as much as I could. I had to kind of sand it up just a little bit, and it was quite a bit of work, in other words, just for a little touch up at least. There was that scuff there. Now there are more extensive things that we can do, in other words, but some people specifically also don't request to do like full treatments and like re-dyes or anything like that, because they sometimes want to do it themselves or anything like that. So I at least decided to clean it up, condition it, get it all restored. We've got the it's always dust all over the place. It's a cobbler shop, obviously. We've got the JR soles on here and everything. If you're wondering about that JR logo, as far as having those little cracks, the ones with that little gold leaf inlay and everything, that doesn't mean that they're a more premium option of JR. Some of them will come with the black. Most of the ones that I keep getting in are the ones with the gold in it, which I like. But when it comes to doing a new finish on the bottom or something, unfortunately it gets nicked a little bit because the logo itself is not impressed as deep as the ones with the black label on it. Sometimes it's black or brown. It could be a random color, but they're a little bit deeper usually than the ones with the gold leaf in there. So it sometimes gets nicked, but usually it wears out anyways pretty quick. So it's more of an aesthetics thing for when they're brand new, not touched or anything like that. So I just wanted to kind of show that. As I mentioned with the Western boots in general, a lot of times I'm not a big fan with Western boots to pre-channel the stitches unless we're trying to showcase the color of the thread that we're using, or the the stitches, and that's what we did here using the red. Even though it's got red sole, inside the channel it's a little bit dark enough where you can see that red pop out nicely and everything. With Western boots, a lot of times, again, I don't like doing it just because it's not a necessity. I prefer the closed channel stitch shoes unless we're really trying to showcase the color of the thread and everything. Plus, when you start getting to the double row stitch boots and everything, triple and quadruple, when you pre-channel it, that's a lot of channeling that has to be done, and it makes the edges a little bit weaker, in other words. So making it a closed channel stitch where our machine cuts the channel for us, it turns out much better in the long run. I've noticed significantly. I've experimented with it a few times and it's just a mess, in other words. But anyways, so that's a Tecova boot resole for you. Like I'd mentioned, Tacova is definitely one of the boot brands that I really like and recommend, especially for that price point. Definitely well worth it. But at the same time, please don't expect it to be equivalent to, say, a custom boot or a Lucchese or, you know, something along those lines. Some of those brands that are just a little more up there in price. But for the price point, definitely Tecovas top of the line. In other words, you can't beat it compared to so many of the other brands out there that are at that same price point and everything. They've got the leather stacked heel bases, like actual leather stacked heel bases, leather or Goodyear welt there. They've got cork filler on the inside instead of foam that they use at the factory. I mean, they can amp up the quality of the cork, but that probably bumps up the price a little bit. Still, for that price point, using cork in a pair of boots is definitely a great thing to have for sure. So that's definitely a nice thing. JR leather soles in general are usually not worth it to do on these boots, at least through us and a number of other great cobblers out there. But there are some cobbler shops that maybe will do it for a little bit of a lower cost. I mean, if you start requesting things like, you know, custom bottom finishes, custom colored thread and all that kind of stuff, then that starts to add up in cost and everything. But generally, most of the Tecovas that I've worked on, most everybody does either a half sole and heel or just a house grade full sole or a rubber full sole of some sort. Not so much a JR leather because, again, it comes in at a higher cost. But otherwise, if you have any questions or comments, leave them down below. Shorter questions or comments, please. Long ones, please message us through Facebook or Instagram. On Facebook, it's Cobblers Plus. On Instagram, it's CobblersPlusCO. Also, make sure to follow us on there if you haven't already, because we post photos on there. On YouTube, we haven't been posting too many photos. I should probably get on that, but I've been working on a very large project here with Janelle that has been delaying us like crazy on everything. In other words, hopefully I could get back on track on posting a little more frequently here in the near future, but for the moment I got to get these big projects all taken care of and kind of out of my hair, in other words, because they are very abnormal, one of which you'll actually be able to see here probably fairly soon, considering when I'm gonna have to post this video of these boots here and everything. But keep an eye out for that. I won't really spoil the surprise quite yet on it, but keep an eye on Facebook and Instagram. I might spoil it some with some photos, actually, so definitely be sure to be following us on either one of those or both of them if you like to. They'll also be on our website at CobblersPlus.com. If you're wanting work done such as this, by the way, you definitely check us out at CobblersPlus.com. That's listed on our site for a JR resole, house grade leather. Half soles I don't think I have quite listed on there, but if you prefer to have a half sole and heel done, shoot me a message as well and I can let you know what that is, and hopefully we'll get those half soles and heels posted. They're just not as common as full soles for us anymore. Most people prefer the full sole option anyways. Otherwise, yeah, hope you enjoyed the video. Make sure to like the video, subscribe, share it as well. If you're trying to introduce somebody to a better quality Western boot, Tacova is definitely the way to go. Show them this video so they can see the internal structures as well. Share it with friends or family. Sorry, I got interrupted there, but anyways, also, if you're interested in a pair of Tecovas, I don't quite have a referral link as of the time of recording this. I'm trying to get one going, but otherwise, if you want a pair of Tecovas, definitely use our link down below if it's there. I'll make sure to put it at the very top so that everyone can see it and everything, because the referral links, I didn't realize how awesome they are, because they really help with the channel and everything for me to keep doing it. Obviously, I enjoy doing the channel, but it does take a lot of time and everything, and so that kind of takes time out of the production and all that kind of stuff. So all the time with the interruptions. But anyways, like I was saying, if I can get all that pushed through and everything with the referral links and the channel and everything, because I have to kind of categorize those funds for this, and might allow me to get a new laptop so that I could actually edit the videos a little more efficiently, because this thing has a tendency to crash. Even though it's a great laptop, it just doesn't have enough power to edit all the videos and all that. So maybe I'll have better, higher quality videos down the road and everything. So definitely make sure to check out that link below. If it's not there, then I apologize. It is because unfortunately the referral link did not work in time for the video or anything like that. I will also on our website try to get an entire page dedicated for brands that we recommend at some point, and maybe I'll have the referral links available on there as well. But there's a number of shoe brands and boot brands for Western boots, work boots, hiking boots, all sorts of kinds of boots and shoes that are great and phenomenal, and we'd love to refer them and give them all shout outs and stuff. It's just so many of them that off the top of my head I never remember them. I'm horrible with names. My wife says I'm like a goldfish with memory, so stop making fun of my memory. But anyways, thank you for watching. Hope you enjoyed, and we'll see you next time.